Hey everybody, this is Chris Ortiz. I'm your GTA or your graduate teaching assistant for this class. I'm going to briefly cover a few topics about portrait lighting for this little tutorial. I want to go through and start off by saying don't think that the lighting tips I'm about to give you in this tutorial can only be used for portrait lighting. They can be used for really any type of products photography that you do, whether it's going to be still life, whether it's going to be like what we're doing here in class, or when you go out into the future with clients. There's a lot of different things that you can use this style of lighting for. I think it's really important that you guys learn it, and that you have the ability to understand what exactly is going on as far as studio lighting is concerned. The reason why I started off with this slide, first and foremost, is because I want to show importance of the importance of lighting within a studio situation. I assure you that there is a subject matter here throughout this this tutorial. You'll notice I use the same model. Her name's Erin. She is in this photo. I didn't use really any type of studio lights whatsoever. There is some natural light coming off or coming into the photo from the camera left of this image, but I have this in such a way where, this image dialed down on my camera in such a way that it's really hard to see. It's about an ISO of 100. It allows for about an f4.5 at I think all the way down to a 30th of a second. As you can see, there's nothing here on this image whatsoever. It looks completely dark. In black, Erin is sitting in front of a black velvet background, however, or backdrop, but you can't see anything. But I assure you she is there. This next slide right here that I'm going to show you is a good example of what the setup looked like. I have just my camera, Erin in the backdrop. I'm using exactly the same program that you guys are using, the lightingdiagrams.com, to go through and create this portfolio, these diagrams. But she is there. This is how it looks. We'll go through also, before I go any further, and let you guys see what the before and afters on two different occasions where light balancing and color correcting is an absolute must, because I know that some of you guys are having a slight issue with that, so I did want to touch on that real quick. But let's get back to the tutorials real quick, and you'll see this next slide right here that in fact Erin is there. What I'm going to be using for this next one is the little pop-up flash that some cameras do have on them. I would really recommend not using this flash unless you're in a very die-hard emergency as for a fill flash, and you'll see why. With this image right here, we can see Erin's right here. But with that pop-up flash that I know Nikons have, I'm not sure if all Canons have them or not. I don't think so, but I know Nikons do. You can see, though, that she has almost a unibrow flash, or a flash that marks a unibrow on her forehead, which is just really unattractive. We lose some of her hair into the black velvet background. On her cheeks, we get some highlights on there, and her chin and her nose, especially her nose, there's a big white mark, almost looks like a big white head on there, which is a reflection from that pop-up flash onto her face. Yes, we see her, but it's really unattractive lighting. Like I said, I would really advise not to go through and use this flash whenever possible. Only use it in a very die-hard situation. What I would recommend doing, though, is getting what I would recommend getting is a flash or maybe a strobe light to go through and use for any indoor setting. Basically, what off-camera flash or OFC is a portable strobe, something that you can pack up in a camera bag and have with you wherever you go. That's what I like to think about it as. And I use that in this next shot here with Erin, which we can see is lit up a little bit better. Her whole entire face and her chest and her hair, it's all illuminated now. We're not losing really any part of her within the backdrop itself. We're seeing that the highlights in her cheeks are gone. because of the fact that the flash is sitting up a little bit higher off of the camera. It's not pointing out directly over the lens. The dot on her nose, the highlight on her nose is has dissipated a little bit, as well as the one on her chin. The unibrow highlight is disrupted. It's still there a little bit, but it's not as obvious as what it was. There is still some highlights in her hair and her shirt, her chest. Everything's just a lot more evenly lit than what this image, the before image, with just a pop-up flash actually is. But if you get one of these flashes, what the flash I use is an SB700 AF Speedlight flash. It's produced by Nikon. I have a Nikon D300 I usually shoot with. And the reason why I use this, I love this flash, especially to have it on my camera and or to go through and use it on a light stand, is because this flash head swivels, meaning that it can go left to right and up and down. Also, if you look at these flashes, another great thing is about it is if you look at the face of the flash, there is a aspect on here, there is a little compartment on there right above the flash bulb where you can pull out, and it should be a little white card that's about 1 inch in length. This card is actually really, really useful, especially if you have the head of the flash tilted up towards the ceiling. The reason why you would have this your flash tilted up towards the ceiling is to go through and bounce the lights or reflect the light off of the ceiling above you to make it look like it's more of a natural lighting situation where we would see on a normal everyday basis. If you look around the room in front of you, or the room that you're sitting in, you'll see that we have overhead lights. We don't really have lights coming directly at us. We do every once in a while we'll have a lamp or a window that's open, but if you think about it, all that is still directional light usually going down, and we just happen to have like the window shades open so it fills in the room from a sideways angle, or the shade is on the lamp and that's actually pushing the lights up and down, so we don't get direct eye level light blinding us as what we do right here with this flash. Now, as I was saying about the card actually is a great tool if you have the head tilted up, because while you have the light flashing, the flash bouncing up off the ceiling, there is a little bit of it that actually goes either behind the photographer, or in this case you, or right above your head, depending on how or what angle you actually have the flash tilted at. What this card does, it actually helps bounce some of that light back at your subject matter of what you're photographing, to help highlight some of the shadows that could be there. So, and I call this the Frankenstein's monster effect, because if you think about it, when you have that light coming in directly overhead, you have usually a darker shadow from the brow, because the brow does stick out a little bit farther than what the eyes do. You also have so it gives you a sunken eye look. You also have that really funky shadow that goes underneath the nose and also underneath the chin. That makes it look like that you have just a really long, pointy face, and it's really unflattering. So what this card does is it helps bounce back some of that light that would otherwise be useless because it goes behind you or above the flash, and bounces it right back into the subject's, basically in this case her face, and we get an image that looks like this. As you can see, the highlights are gone. For the most part on her nose, her chin, and even her forehead with the unibrow. The unibrow is still a little bit there, but the highlights on her cheeks are completely gone. The light looks like it's actually coming down from the ceiling instead of actually at her from the camera height. We can see that there isn't really bad shadows there underneath her eyes. Those are mostly filled in. There is a little bit more harsher of a shadow underneath her chin. If we look at it from the flash when it's pointing straight on in this image, where we see her underneath her chin is a little bit more defined, versus this image where it's a little bit more of a gray zone, I guess you can call it, not so well lit up. But we also do not lose any part of her hair within the shadows. There's actually no harsh highlights on her hair, as what we would see with this image with the flash being straight onto her. It's actually really beautifully lit, and I would recommend, if you have just this, like a a flash, an off-camera flash, and have it attached onto the shoe mount of your camera, use this situation as much as possible. It's actually really, really nice to go through and be able to do that, to work in this situation, because the lighting is just so much more flattering. Now, let's say you have an older flash that doesn't have this card, or you have a flash that doesn't have this card, period. Doesn't matter if it's old or new. Easy way to go through and do it is find a business card somewhere. It could be, your local goods sense card, the rewards card, or Subway card, that rewards punch card, whatever it is, to your local doctors, your moms, your dad, even you might have a business card, doesn't matter. But take that card, put it on top of your flash, and take just like a hair tie or rubber band, wrap it around there to secure it, and there you go. You have that white card where you can bounce that flash back, or that wasted part of the flash back into the subject which you're photographing. It's really, really nice, really simple. Recommend it as a quick fix for a lot of different things that you can use this flash for. This next slide, you'll see this is the setup that I used for Aaron. It's very simple. This is in the living room. I have my backdrop stand there, kind of small and collapsed, just for this black velvet's background, and then where the tripod is, that's actually in place of me, where I would be standing during this shoot. You can see there's really nothing else there except for the TV and stuff, but I did put this up to about a ISO of 1600, so you can see the natural light coming in. There is a good amount of light coming in. Now, the reason why we can see it now versus when we could see it or beforehand, especially on that first slide, is because our eyes automatically adjust for all light situations. Our cameras, they're not able to go through and do that per se. They can if you put it like on an auto ISO, which I don't recommend doing because it's going to be jumping all over the place depending on if you're shooting indoors, outdoors, in shadow, out shadow. It really depends, and it can also go through and have some really funky times if you're trying to shoot studio settings and trying to pre-focus, and then all of a sudden, or it's getting all the readings, and all of a sudden your lights, your strobes are going, and your flashes all of a sudden go, and it could really, sometimes it can go through and get awry, and then you have a lot of post-production to do. It's really easy, better if you just preset your ISO and go for it that way. As you can see this, excuse me, let me backtrack a little bit. But it is a really good way. It's a really good tool to go through and use. That flash. Now, one thing I will show you here is the diagram of how I set this up. As you can see, it was just me, Aaron, my camera, and my flash. Now, the reason why I had the flash off the camera a little bit is strictly because it is a detachable flash. I want to go through and kind of emphasize that a little bit more. That's not the pop-up flash. This is just fits right in the hot shoe of the camera, and I can actually take it off and either put a radio remote connector to it, or even my TTL cord to it, which is what I actually have. I have it's right here in my hand right now. It starts out to probably about 3 or 4 feet in length. So it's a TTL cord that I just use all the time. I love it. It's probably from maybe from the 80s. My stepdad gave it to me. This is one of the key things that you should use as a photographer once you're starting to go through and use off-camera flash, which is a must for any type of portraiture. This should be part of your everyday arsenal. A radio transmitter or a TTL cord. It works wonders. As you can see, in this next couple of slides, I actually have moved my flash off camera, completely off camera, to a light stand, and I'm using an umbrella here to go through and diffuse the light. Now, I did notice in a couple of portfolios that diffusion is a little bit of an issue. It is very, very important that you diffuse that light. The diffused light actually gives a better look of softness to the model or the subject matter that you're photographing. It helps kind of just allows the light to wrap around a little bit more, if you will, the subject matter which you're photographing, instead of creating such a harsh light to dark shadows. It allows it to be, just softer, and it's much more attractive when you're photographing. Now, I also in these photos, these next few photos have my reflector up as well. That's another key piece of equipment that I definitely suggest any photographer have. I have a 5-in-1 reflector. That means that there is four different reflectors plus a center diffuser. The four reflectors, actually, that's a falsehood. It's 3 reflectors and a black mat, which, as we know from junior high and high school science classes, black does not reflect light. It helps actually absorb light. So using the black will actually take light away. But there's a silver, a gold reflector, and a white reflector. The white reflector is probably the softest reflector there that's in the kit, versus the metallic colors of the silver and gold. And it's just one of those things where, as a photographer, you have to use a professional judgment in this case to figure out which one is best for the subject matter that you're photographing, and also meets, sometimes you have to go through and say your client's needs, whether it's going to be a fashion shoot, a product shoot, or whatever the case may be. You have to go through and be mindful of which one you use. For instance, right here, this image, I am using I believe it's my white balance. Excuse me, it's the whites reflector here. Also, I did say white balance because Aaron's actually holding my white balance cards. You can see that I have a white one, a gray one, and a black one here. The reason why I do bring this up, and I did add this in, like I said earlier, is because some people did have a issue with the white balance in their images, and it really does affect the tone and the color and the feel of a picture. And it really could take a photo from being blah to possibly the one. For instance, this is a well lit shot. How the camera, the light coming off from camera right, and I have the reflector on camera left. And so I'm sitting back looking at this and saying, okay, it's well shot. We have really no highlights on her forehead, on her cheek. On her cheeks, we have, it's gently wrapped around her face. We don't really, have a lot of harsh shadows really anywhere on her body. It's an attractive lit shot. However, we go through and we look at it, and it looks okay, light-wise, or color-wise, until we actually go through and color or make sure that we have the white balance correct. Now, this image, we have the white balance correct. I actually selected the in Photoshop, which is what I use to go through and edit my photos, the white card or the white balance tool. Selected the white card, and we actually have life in her body now. She actually looks like she's healthy. She has color to her skin. It's not so much of a bluish, whitish, grayish tone here as what we see in this previous image before we color corrected, as we see now. And it's this image now is really attractive. It's really, really good. And if I were to reshoot this without the cards, I would say it's ready to go for a corporate portrait headshot. Or senior headshot, or whatever the case may be. It's a great little quick portrait that we did. Now, the reason why I said earlier that I use my white reflector is because you can see a very nice, subtle reflection onto camera left side of her face, or the right side of her face, if you want to do it that way, where we don't lose any part of her hair and her skin, or we don't lose any part of the skin and how it wraps around to her hair by her eyes and her cheeks. We don't lose really any of her shoulders into the backdrop. The shadow underneath her chin is there, but we can still make out the definition between the defining lines between her chin and her neck, showing that it's not just one weird skin line going down. She actually has some three-dimensional depth between her face and her chin and her body and everything else. And like I said, it's really, really nicely lit. The next image here we have is the silver reflector. The reason why I wanted to show this one right behind the other one, behind the white one, is because we can look at this and we can tell that her face is lit up just a little bit more, especially on the camera left side of her face, or her personal right side of the face. We can also see part of her hair actually, and how, and higher up on her head, and it doesn't fade into the black background as much as what it did with the whites, because the silver is actually reflecting more more light than what the white one is. Now let's look at this again. We have the whites where we're actually losing a good chunk of the hair into the background. And it's not as well lit on the right side. The camera left side of her face, her right side of the face. It's nicely lit, I will say that, but it's not as well lit as what this is. Now, we do also have that gold reflector too. The gold reflector, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the gold reflector itself is a very special reflector. And it really, once again, goes back to you as a photographer and what you want to do, and how you want that light to look, the reflected light to look. As you can see, this actually the light looks very uniform from the flash to the reflector, and it really wraps around her face and it looks uniformed. However, we go back to that gold and we have a whole new look about it. We actually have more of a natural tone to the face now. It might be a little bit more on the yellow side, the yellow orange side actually, than what a natural look would go. But that's because of the gold reflecting, the light reflecting off that gold and picking up that color with it. It's not, the shine on her face is not as noticeable in this image because the gold actually matches a little bit better to her skin tone personally. But it all once again goes back to what you as a photographer want to do, want to think about, how to think about doing this and everything else. Now, I did also mention that there's a black side of the reflector as well, and how that actually takes away lights. Now, what I mean by that is it actually it does not reflect any light whatsoever. It takes away that light from hitting that her camera left side of her face. And here's an example of that. As you can see, we have basically a really interesting Rembrandt lighting effect to her face. We see that the reason why it's called the Rembrandt is because we look at the shadier part of her face, so camera left side of her face, we actually have that V from underneath her eyes and her right to the side of her nose, and it goes down, points down to her mouth or to the side of her mouth. The artist Rembrandt perfected this this lighting technique in his paintings, and this style of lighting basically went through and got its name from Rembrandt. So this, it creates a very good, very realistic Rembrandt style of flash, or excuse me, of lighting on her face. But it's on the aid of that diffused light coming from my flash, camera right, and the black reflector on camera left, which is taking away that light, making sure that not as much light is reflected on her face as possible. Now, I'm going to show you real quick the lighting diagram of how I have this set up. As you can see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I have the camera right in the middle, focus on Aaron. I have the camera flash, camera right, with an umbrella there to help diffuse that light. And then I have the reflector on camera left to help bounce or even take away some of that light. Now, the reason why I'm using an umbrella here to go through and diffuse that light instead of a softbox is because I like it. Let me backtrack. It really depends on what you want to do. I like the umbrella to go through and diffuse the light that much more, because the umbrella, for the most part, can get a little bit farther away from the camera flash or from the source of the light than what a softbox can and will go through and do. And unlike a softbox, the camera flash really just is able to spread out and kind of illuminate a lot more of the subject matter of what you're photographing, where the umbrella can actually go through and diffuse that light a little bit better. Um, Now, you don't think that you can't go, or that you have to have your reflector just on the side, though. You can have it. You can have her holding it. You can have it, above her to get a little bit of a, interesting reflection off the top of her head, or whatever the case may be. In this case, I actually have it behind her, and just using it as a white backdrop. But you can also go through and then have a little bit extra light bouncing off onto the camera side of her, the flash side of her face, camera right, which helps illuminate that side of her face, and you get this really, really nice, especially texture, highlight on her face, which normally I don't think would normally be there, because we can see how it drops off more dramatically as you go back on her face. Back towards the ears, to the hairline, and so on. And it really does add a nice 3D effect to the whole entire image. And so play around with your reflector. You never know what's going to happen or what you can actually go through and do with that reflector in the lighting source until you actually try. Experimentation is a necessity when you're learning how to go through and do lights. And even when you're not learning how to go through and do lights, when you actually already think of yourself, you've been doing it for 20 years and thinking of yourself as a master, there's always more lighting situations you can go through and do, and different lighting techniques that you can, go through and improve on, or creates, and it becomes very beautiful. Here's the reflector situation that I have here. I didn't use a softbox there. I don't know why I have a softbox listed. Still have the umbrella as I do here in this situation. So excuse that little error on my part. But, this is basically still the same setup. Now, I do have a softbox that I do use for the next shoot, or the next image. The softbox is actually a Westcott Mini Apollo softbox. It's about 16 inches by 16 inches square. And the thing about softboxes are, the flash actually faces away from your subject that you're photographing. The whole entire interior of the softbox is lined by the same silver reflection material as what your reflector is made out of, I guess. It's the same reflective materials that silver bounce card or silver bounce reflector is made out of. So it gathers the light and actually helps channels it to more of a specific point that you're photographing. It doesn't allow the light to expand as much as what it would with the umbrella. On all the softboxes, you do have a diffuser cover or a sheet that can go over it. Mine happens to be Velcro, which is really nice, because then I can just, on three of the sides, or four sides, on the top side is attached, so I can just unvelcro it, throw it up. If I don't want that diffused light, I just want the softbox to go through and kind of channel that light in a little bit more, specifically to a certain spot. But the reflector, the diffuser material there is once again very, very nice. It's a must use for the situation, especially in portraiture, because you don't want those harsh highlights and the harsh shadows on the model. I moved my reflector to the camera right side on this time. I'm using the silver. Once again, I like the look of the silver reflector, so that's the one I normally tend to use when I use a reflector and use studio lighting. But this is the image that we get here. We have, it's a little bit more lit on the left camera left side of her face. It's a little bit more directional. You can tell it's coming in almost directly from camera left, versus the camera right images of the umbrella, which is a little bit more, shall we say, hard to figure out where that is, because the light becomes so spread out before it even hits the umbrella that it kind of loses, its touch or its directionability a little bit unless you actually look at the highlights like underneath her chin and underneath her nose, where you can see the lights actually coming in from a little bit above her. We have, harsher shadows coming in from the left to the right. Like I said, I am using my reflector there, so you can actually see. Let's see if my stylus is going to work here. No, it's not. But you can see on the right hand side of her face, the camera right side of her face, where some shadows should be right there next to her hairline and so on, where you can actually see a little bit more of a reflection that's coming from the silver reflector that I have being held up. Now, this whole entire shoot up until this next part, it was done just me and her. There is a way to go through and do this type of lighting with just two people, even though I'm using a flash, a reflector, and everything else. Because of the fact I have two light stands that I use constantly. Then they say necessity is the mother of invention. I actually learned this about a year, 2 years ago. That if I bought the smallest A clip available at the hardware store, that clip actually fits really well into my light stand and the shoe that actually holds the flash in there, and the I guess the clip part of the A clip actually can slide right into that, which then I can put the cloth handle of the reflector into the A clip holder, or the other side of the light stand, and just clip it on there. It actually holds my reflector pretty well, so I don't need that third person in there, or that assistant in there to go through and do. I can go through and do this whole entire interior shoot like this with just me in that reflector in the light stand, and still have a pretty decent way of lighting things, and still having that reflector up there. As you can see, this is the way it. I have it set. I do have, like I said, the reflector right here off of camera rights. Once again, I don't know why that's not in there. That's my fault. But I have my softbox pointed at Aaron almost that exact same direction. It's almost at a 45-degree angle from her, maybe closer to 50, and the reflector, that's where I was looking for, is closer to her than what's I would say is about as close to her as what it is in this diagram right here, where we see it's basically right there, right next to her. I would say that's pretty much the same setup I have here for this image, just the light source is coming from the different side. Now, one thing I did talk about earlier is the center of that 5-in-1 is a diffuser. The diffuser is actually really, really, really nice, because that's a huge diffuser. I mean, we're talking, 3 foot, wide circular diffuser, circumference diffuser, that if by chance you're ever shooting outdoors, you can use very, very well. The reason why I bring that up is because the next shoot we do is outdoors. As you can see, it's very, very harsh lighting. It's natural light coming from the sun. This is on a back deck. Once again, I'm using the cards, the white balance cards. Now, the reason why it's important, let's focus on the cards real quick. The reason why it's important to have more than just that white balance one, because in this image, if I were to go through, and I tried this, but if I went into Photoshop, try to do the white balance on this, it actually says that white is too light. It cannot read the white balance or the white card, and so I needed to choose a different. What was it? A different surface to read off of, which is then I went to the gray card, and we actually go through, and it looks pretty well lit here. I actually know a little bit more about the Kelvin scale, so I can go through and match pretty well color temperature wise with the Kelvin scale, which is a white balance setting that you can choose on your camera if you feel like being a little risky and playing around with that. But still, I wasn't quite there, and with the gray card balance, now I actually have a little bit more life into it, a little bit more color into the situation. It's a little bit more yellow-brown. If you compare the first image right here, pre-color balance, to the post-color balance, you can see that she actually has a little bit more skin tone to her. It looks a little bit better. But as you can see, like I said, here's the first portrait with just her standing there. Same porch, same time of day. This is probably about 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I did shoot this at this time because, you know, sometimes our clients, they have a specific time that they can be there, that you have to shoot. She was only able to shoot from like 12:30 to I think 2 o'clock in the afternoon because she's a college student too. She has classes from 11 to noon that day. This is on a Friday, from 11 to noon, and then I think like 2:30 to 3:30 or something like that. It was a weird time, so we had to shoot right in the middle of the day. And as you can see, we lose part of her, the sun is so hot that we lose part of her, the definition of her skin on the camera right side of her face. It's such a harsh highlight, and especially, right there, right on her forehead, and how it goes down to her eye, and as it trails underneath her eye to her cheek. It's so distracting. It's such a harsh highlight, and never try to shoot in this time of day, but if you can't wait to that quote golden hour to go through and shoot, there is a trick you can use if you have that 5-in-1 reflector. Take off the reflective material on the outside, get that center diffuser up, and if you have, hopefully you have somebody there to help with the shoot, and have that person who's there to help with the shoot hold that up above your model, because all of a sudden your assistant does that and bam, it's diffused. It's really soft lighting, and you can still shoot outdoors at any time of day that you need to. And you can see the background is still really bright. It's as bright as it is right here. We might have a slightly different angle of what we shot at with the trees, but you can see even with the tree on the camera left side, it's still really bright as much as it is out here. But she's actually in a very nice soft lighting now. The harsh highlights that was on her face previously, as we can see in this image, on the camera right side of her face, it's no longer there. It's not, that highlight's definitely not there to distract from really any other part of the image. It's really well evenly lit. The shadows aren't really there. That were being caused earlier in this image by the light just protruding down on her face. However, there is one other thing that you can do. I do it from time to time, and it's just a personal thing. Some people will be fine. You say this image is fine. It's really good. It's a diffused light, even though we have the natural light in the background. Everything looks really well shot. But I will go through every once in a while and still pull out my my flash, and in this case I'll use a softbox to go through and get a little bit more fill flash and take care of some of those shadows that we have, like on the camera left side of her face, right there with the where the eye meets the bridge of the nose, also where the nostril meets the side of the nostril meets her cheek line indentation, and also on the right side, camera right side of her face, where her cheek, the crease in her, where her cheek meets her lip, there has a little bit of a stronger shadow there. You can take care of that if you go through and use a fill flash, which I used in this case was my SB700 AF Speedlight with that Westcott Apollo Mini, or Mini Apollo, and it takes care of a lot of the a lot of the shadows that were created by just diffusing the lights. Now she's still there. The sun's still there. This was used probably no more than 5-10 minutes after this shot was probably no more than 5 minutes, I would say, after this. And so the sun's virtually in the same spot, but her whole entire face is a little bit more lit. The shadows on the camera left side of her nose and her eye, on her camera left eye, is not really there. The shadow underneath or by her cheek is not as profound as what it was underneath her chin. It's not profound anymore. It's just a little bit better, at least in my mind, a little bit more of a natural look, because you still have the instance of a diffused light coming in from the right hand side or excuse me, camera left hand side of the image, and it's another little trick that you can use if you don't have another reflector there. Like I didn't use it to my two reflectors here. I had that one reflector where I took off the reflective material and just used the diffuser, and then diffuse the fill flash coming in, so it's a nice soft roundness to her face now. And here's the actual stuff that I use, as you can see. Unfortunately, the light diagrams, they didn't have a round diffuser, so I just had to use a square one. We had the happy little sun. I'm sounding like Bob Ross, I know, but the happy little sun on camera right. The diffused light coming from camera left, about 45-degree angle from the subject matter. The subject matter right in the middle there, and me photographing them. That's basically the lighting steps that I go through and use to go through and create, really, really nice, simple studio lit photography. If you have strobes, if you have more than one flash, use it, experiment with it. If you only have one light source, though, whether it be a strobe or a fill flash, whatever the case may be, or excuse me, not a fill flash, but like an SB700 or an off-camera flash like I have, these are the simple tips that you can go through and use and get really well lit subject matters within your photography, really well lit photography. Go through and play with it. Experimenting is a key must for photography. These are just easy, simple tips. Like I said, continue using photography from this style of flash photography from here on out. It'll work wonders for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to go through and ask me. I'm always on. You can always get a hold of me through email. My email is routed through my phone, so even if I'm not around my computer, I can still get your emails. I'm also on Blackboard IM chats. A lot of the times you can find me on there. Also look up, Lee and shoot him an email whenever the case may be. He's always more than willing to go through and answer any questions, just like I am. There's also two videos that I would recommend if anybody wants further watching. Go ahead and get further tutorials, I guess, about studio and natural lighting. Go ahead and email me if you want those. I can send them to you in that case. It's Douglas Kirkland's videos on Lynda. Actually, I'll go ahead and give them to you. It's Douglas Kirkland's videos on lynda.com. There's one on studio portrait lighting photography, and natural portrait or natural lighting portrait photography. Those two I would recommend watching. It's basically goes over the same information that I learned, but in a different detailed manner, slightly different detailed manner. He's really, really good, though. Great on portrait photography. He started off in look. His whole entire bio is on there on each video. It's like 4 minutes on the very tail end. But really good guy. Watch those for further details. But yeah, ask away if you have any questions. Lee and I are always here to help. But just have fun. That's the only thing I could recommend. Have fun, experiment, see what you come up with. But diffuse the lights, white balance, and don't be afraid to mess around. See how light goes through and affects things. If you want to try this before shooting, before you start shutter clicking, go through and use a flashlight. Have a flashlight in place of your flash, in place of your strobe, and figure out where that light's going to hit, how it's going to diffuse, how it's going to bounce around. Because we all know batteries, can get expensive. You don't want to go through and use, 800 batteries in your studio, your off-camera flash, or use your power batteries for your strobes too much. Then use a flashlight. It's always a great thing to have. You can always go through and also paint on light too if you're doing a time exposure shot. You can use your that flashlight to paint the subject matter with some extra lights. Just have fun. Feel free to experiment as much as you want. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, once again, please feel free to reach out and ask. Thank you.